Jane, the Treasure Island plan is being implemented and is about to be voted on in the planning process and the Board of Supervisors. Is there anything that you would change just in looking at the proposal as it stands now? Is there anything that you would actually change about that proposal?
So Treasure Island is a Superfund site, so we have some certain levels of guarantees in terms of the cleanup that's going to happen at Treasure Island, which is often a debate at Baby Hunters Point, and I think that that's a good thing. I'm actually happy with a lot of the housing plans that I've seen at Treasure Island. We're looking at a 30% inclusionary, 30% affordable housing, 5% of which will be inclusionary on-site, 25% which will be off-site, which guarantees a deeper affordability for many families. I spend a lot of time in Treasure Island. A lot of our public school families live in Treasure Island as well. They're very low income. They depend on deeply affordable housing that's safe. And it's a great community. The community has really come together to really reduce violence, and I think it's important that we protect the community that's there. But we'll also be diversifying the income diversity in that island as well. I mean, they're building a high-rise, they'll be building a ferry. One thing that I really want to think about is increasing public transit to Treasure Island as well. I don't think the 108 is enough. I think that we need to do a lot more to make sure that Treasure Island is better connected to San Francisco, and we must build a grocery store on Treasure Island. There's currently nothing on Treasure Island for the residents. They have to come into the city for their services and for their grocery shopping.
Mr. Meko. You've got a rich history in development and working in Western Soma and a lot of community plans. How would you take that history and get consensus on the Board of Supervisors for many of the programs that you've been recommending for years and years and years and years that have never actually come into being?
Actually, what we've done is what we call incremental planning, little baby steps, because the whole goal of community-based planning is to draw everyone into the process, to educate you on what the tools are, what the possibilities are, rather than just treating the public like the dumb studio audience that's supposed to be looking to the planning department to do everything for us. So step by step, through the 5 years that the Western Soma process has gone on, we have introduced formula retail legislation. And in our special use district, formula retail is now, that's chain stores, if you don't know the term, is now a conditional use. We've put controls on market rate SRO units, just one thing after another. And as people begin to see success, every vote that we have had to go through at the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, we have won, in most cases unanimously. Thank you.
Actually, I was curious about this. I want to ask you this anyway. I was listening to your Bay Guardian endorsement interview, and one of the discussion points became about freezing market rate housing development here in the city. And I wanted to hear your thoughts about that more and what you think the viability of that, and also looking at, the building of housing stock for all of our residents.
We have a problem with affordable housing, and that's at all levels. Even folks who earn $80,000 a year together can't qualify to buy some housing in San Francisco. So it's clear that we have a housing crisis. The most inexpensive way to solve the housing crisis is to actually protect the housing that's here. So there's a lot of things we can do. There's not going to be a lot of development. The funding for development is really on hold until the economy actually catches up and some of the foreclosures empty out across the Bay Area. So one of the things we can do is look at our adaptive reuse of some of the buildings that are empty. A lot of office buildings like the AAA building is empty. We need to look at using those for things like supportive housing, family housing, and work together to actually, and I have with developers, to actually get developers to increase the levels of affordability up to 120% of median income with support from our housing fund, from our affordable housing funds that are available. There are some that are available through sources. We need to come together and do another housing bond, but there's some really interesting creative ways of using existing buildings right now that we should be looking at.
Ms. Sparks. Back to part B. The average salary for city workers, including benefits, is $39 an hour. The average salary in the private sector, including benefits, is $27 an hour. How can you tell the people in our audience, who I assume are by and large part of the private sector, that you do not support pension reform among our city employees?
That's a great question, because I do support pension reform, and that's what I said earlier, and so do most of the unions. I just don't support a political game where Jeff Adachi, to try to show his moderate stripes, has put an ordinance on the balance. And number one, probably is unenforceable because it goes against existing collective bargaining agreements. Number two, codifies 10 and 9 and 10% pension contributions, which then would have to go back to the board, to the voters, if in fact we want a 12% or a 13% or a 6%. So I think it's bad public policy the way it's being approached. I think the unions agree we need pension reform. There's no question the people agree we need pension reform that live in the city. I think everyone agrees we need pension reform. I just think the way this is being done is not the correct way to do it from a public policy standpoint.
My question is for Anna Conda. How would you address public safety concerns in District 6?
Thanks, Matt. That's a great question. Actually, I think with safe injection sites and housing people, we will not have the desperation that creates public safety problems. I think controlling the gentrification of said neighborhoods is also a way to keep down desperation. And if you don't have desperate people, then you don't have a lot of crime on the street. The one thing I would like to see is, I know the cars, after working in the Tenderloin, of the drug dealers who circle the block patrolling their dealers, and I know the people who are dealers, and then I watch them move over to 6th Street at 4 o'clock every day as the new batch comes in. And I would like to ask the SFPD why they're not controlling drugs better there, and I think I would work on that definitely in the Tenderloin and along 6th Street. But I think housing and safe injection sites are great ways to control violence on the streets.
My question is for James Keyes. From the redevelopment policies of the 1960s through rampant gentrification in the 1990s and 2000s, San Francisco has experienced large-scale displacement of low-income residents, particularly among communities of color. In city planning, land use, zoning, and other legislative decisions, what types of policies will you support to ensure that San Francisco preserves its remaining economic and ethnic diversity?
Thank you very much for that question, Dean. My whole entire campaign has been built around economic security. I want to make sure that we are moving people through the system and creating a brand new middle class, and that middle class will come from the very same people who inhabit and live in the Tenderloin and in the North Mission, those people who are continuing to struggle day to day. And we create a better living condition for them, make sure that they are given health care, provide them with job training, but on-the-job training so that they're getting paid while they're working. We can see people then buy into and give back to their community by becoming that new middle class.
So my question is for Dean. And Dean, I would like to know what you think about the current truancy problem that we're having in the schools, and what you could do to, or what you would do to improve upon truancy.
Thank you, Anna, for that question. Some of the causes of truancy that I've acknowledged and experienced in working for public schools here in San Francisco is the kids feel as though they can make more money outside the classroom than being in the classroom, and they don't understand the importance of education. A lot of them don't feel like they can be that they're being understood at the schools or through administration or through the district. I think a way for us to combat these issues, a lot of them come from low-income families. 2/3 of them are African American, Latino population. I think what we need to do is we need to delve deeper into what the root of the problem is, work with the administration, and help everybody understand what the problems are and move forward on keeping these kids in school.
Yes, Matt. My question to you is, San Francisco continues to have a high rate of homelessness. We see 6,000 plus homeless people on the streets with perhaps 1,100 shelter beds. What are your plans to reduce the amount of homelessness or in homelessness in San Francisco?
Well, I think it's a complicated problem is the first thing to understand. It's not a simple problem, it's a hard problem. And we can go after the low-hanging fruit first and go after the open drug dealing that happens. Because the fact is a lot of the people on the street have substance abuse problems, and they are not going to get better as long as illegal drugs are available to them wherever they are. Now, I do support San Francisco offering supportive housing to people. But as I mentioned earlier, I think that housing should be integrated with services. And so people have the benefit, they can get a hand up, which is what they need. People need to put their life together. They need services right where they live so they can get the counseling and they can get the substance abuse treatment and the mental health treatment and then eventually the job treatment so that they can go work in society and become productive members of society.